Well this morning. My name's Carson Mathis, and I have the pleasure of leading our adaptive reuse team at JLL within our project and development services. So what does that mean? I've been working here almost 4 years, and sometimes it stumps me. So project and development services is a division of JLL. When you think JLL, most people think brokerage, maybe even capital markets, or some of our facilities management folks. But we also have project and development services, which are third-party construction management or owner's representation, as some of you guys might experience. And within that, project and development services, we have a specialized group of construction management professionals that I have the pleasure of leading and the honor of leading. And we specialize in adaptive reuse. So this morning, Chris, thanks again for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to talk about adaptive reuse because it's a passion of mine, and my goal today, I have 3 simple objectives. First one, I'd like for you to get to know us and my team and what our capabilities are should it become pertinent later. I'd like to convince you that adaptive reuse is interesting and also fantastic. And then the last piece, as it goes with 15 minutes and a microphone, I'd like for you to become dangerously informed as to the benefits of adaptive reuse. I will warn you ahead of time, public speaking is not my strong suit. Leading and teaching are probably 2 of my stronger suits, so you're fortunate in that sense. I've kind of catered today's presentation to make sure that it is more of an interaction between all of you and myself, and not just me trying to convince you that adaptive reuse is cool. All right, very good. So JLL-Adaptive reuse, as we already talked about, our origins are within the Project and Development Services group. PDS has been around for quite a while now. A number that we like to carry is 367%, and that number means 367% return on investment. So when you hire me to run your project, for every $1 I charge you in fee, I'll give you back that $1, and I'll probably give you almost $3 in savings across the life of the project. We're housed within our Special Projects division, which just means we joke about that because we started as kind of like this variable enterprise. And people are like, what does variable mean? And it's like, well, I think it's just everything else that nobody else wants to mess with. It's not industrial, it's not office interiors, it's just special projects. And so what that means is that there's a high likelihood that the project is going to be complicated. It's going to require a certain finesse and a certain subject matter expertise that a lot of people don't have. And so we're fortunate enough to have that. As Steven said, we're literally next door. You go down one set of elevators, walk across the lobby, go back up the other set of elevators. We're on the 11th, 12th, and 13th, 14th, however you look at high-rises that don't have a 13th floor, that's where we are. We're next door. Come see us. Design, development, construction, that's kind of where we live, breathe, and eat. We like to be involved very early on any project. We serve multiple asset types and expertise. Adaptive reuse is what you would consider taking a building that used to do this, and now I needed to do that on a very simple kind of micro level. We also handle historic preservation. So a lot of you guys are dealing with tax credits and situations like that where you're incentivized to take on buildings that are considerably older than building new. Federal government, state governments, local jurisdictions have incentivized that through tax incentives and rebates, and so we specialize in that as well. We do asset repositioning, which is a big service for a lot of our investor clients. We do food and beverage. We do what we call urban infill, which is just more of a mixed-use type product. So we do a lot, but it's a pleasure of mine to get to lead this team. So my second objective today, why adaptive reuse is so great. So recently, I had the pleasure of speaking down at Georgia Tech at a Georgia Economic Development Symposium. And so part of that was explaining the economic incentives and the benefits of adaptive reuse. And so today I boiled it down because there's, in my mind, several reasons why adaptive reuse is awesome. But for today, I wanted to talk about 3 that I thought you might find important as industry professionals. So we'll talk about some economic benefits, we'll talk about environmental, and then we'll talk about social. All right. Positive economic development. So adaptive reuse is an interesting asset class in the sense that it carries a certain connotation and a certain character to the buildings, right? So when you go through these historic kind of parts of town, you notice where you are. I live in Roswell. We love Roswell, right? Roswell has Canton Street. Canton Street has an allure that's just different than other suburb cities because of its character-rich architecture, right? Same thing. So a lot of what people don't understand about adaptive reuse is that those character-rich buildings and that character of that neighborhood, it drives a lot of secondary and tertiary effects. You get greater diversity in terms of ethnicity, countries of origin, sexual orientation. There's more jobs in small businesses and more startups of small businesses. And there's also certain components of affordable housing that we are seeing kind of play out in these types of communities. Communities with a mix of old and new buildings shown to have higher density, more walkability, more new small business starts, more women and minority-owned businesses, and a higher percentage of affordable housing. So pretty cool stuff when you look at it on that level. There's a lot more detail and a lot more information circulating about that, but all in all, economic development and adaptive reuse kind of go hand in hand. All right, so here's where the teaching comes in. So I've got an old building and a picture. I want to talk about environmental benefits of adaptive reuse, but before I just give you the answers, I'd like to invite you guys into the conversation. So let me hear, and you can just yell it from wherever you're sitting. Environmental benefits of adaptive reuse, what do you think they are?
Less construction waste.
Okay. Less construction waste.
Cleaner air, better circulation in the buildings.
Okay.
Abatement.
Abatement. I think we got most of them. So, environmentally sustainable. A lot of these buildings are already existing, and so what was your name? I'm sorry.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, Stephanie. Thank you for your answer. Greener than new LEED buildings, right? The greenest building is the one that's already there, right? You take it and you reposition it and you make it what you need it to be. It doesn't get any greener than that. It's like recycling in lieu of taking out the trash, right? Let's see, less material, labor, and time. To your point, inherent that if the building is sitting there and it's not a piece of dirt that you have to build on, it takes less material, it takes less labor, it takes less equipment. Those things carry with carbon effects, right? You got equipment that runs on fuel affects carbon, so it increases the value of adjoining properties. I think we've seen that. I don't know if you've been to Chattanooga recently. My wife and I love it there. If you go to their historic Southside district, you can literally see the adaptive reuse effort coming down Southside District Street. And it's cool to watch, frankly. Social familiarity with links to the past. So something cool about adaptive reuse is that it carries a certain historical connotation with it that you just don't get in new construction. And then it preserves the history and the character of it. So great job. I think we got them all. Appreciate it. We didn't cover abatement. That's a good one. All right, social benefits of adaptive reuse. So this is interesting. It's probably my favorite part of adaptive reuse. But we're going to do an activity, right? So what I'd like for you to do is get out your phones. I want you to open either your notes or whatever you use to jot things down when people are talking, whether it's an email. All right? So the objective of this activity, two parts. Agree that developing quality places is an investment in the people of a community. And also want to teach you a new word called neuroarchitecture. All right, so here's how this activity is going to work. I'm going to show you a series of images on the screen, right? And off to your right, my right-hand side of the page, there's going to be a series of words and emotions with colors associated with them. So when you see the image, I want you to take note of how that makes you feel based on the words there to the right. It doesn't have to be specific to the words on the right. If you have another word that you want to use, help yourself. But the idea is that I'm going to quickly show an image to you, and I want you just to capture it quickly. I don't want you to overthink it. Within 5 seconds, I want you to capture how the image makes you feel. Everybody clear?
Mm-hmm.
Got it? All right, cool. So here's your words. You can use whatever words you want to. Y'all ready? Getting nervous? Okay, here we go. Just write down the word that makes you feel that way. Moving on. Boom. All right. We need to do it again. Everybody keep up?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's go back to the first picture. Anybody want to share what you feel when you see this?
I felt cool.
Chris says he feels cool. You are cool.
Thank you. Second. Constant state.
All right, something.
Excited.
Excited, passion. What else?
Romance.
What's that?
Romance.
Romance. What else?
Mixed emotions.
Mixed emotions. Yeah, so when I look at this picture, it kind of makes me anxious, to be fair. A lot of cars whizzing by, really close to pedestrians. The streets look pretty small. How about this one?
Calm.
Calm. Does it make anybody anxious that there's bicycles? Like you have to go ride that for across that city?
Love Amsterdam.
Yeah, it's beautiful. When I look at this, I see symmetry, right? So that to my eye, it sees organized, which is how my brain thinks too.
Mhm.
How about this one?
Wow.
Stress.
Stressed.
Wow.
I heard wow. Yeah. So I think the goal here, it's a library actually, I believe, and it's got some other meeting areas and stuff in it. But you know, the high ceilings, kind of the disorganized look as it relates visually from the ceilings down to the floor, and the sharp angles of the building, and the tables, and the way the floor lays in comparison to the others, the stairway. Part of me thinks it looks pretty cool, but it would be hard for me to study there. Right?
Mm.
What are your thoughts?
Solid.
Cool, solid. Stress, yeah. Where's the daylight? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Brutal. Yeah, it's kind of it's a brutalist. It's actually a brutalist.
Windowless.
Windowless, yeah. Soulless. This is actually at America's Mark, which is right down the street. Yeah, so this is building 2.
You guys gave it a soul.
Yeah, we're actually working down there, so we'll talk about that maybe later. All right, how about this one? Calm. Romance.
Very happy.
Yeah, very happy. Yeah.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. You know what? My goal was not to say that word today. Yeah, this looks like a spot that I would take my wife for a date night. Very relaxing, very easy. Reminds me kind of almost of Barcelona. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Barcelona.
Yeah.
That plaza. Pretty cool.
Strand.
Yeah. All right, so neuroarchitecture, we talked about, is the study, it's a field of study actually, that for those of you guys that are English majors, neuro, brain, architecture, which we all know what that means, but it's the human response to the built environment, right? And so there's an effect on architecture, just like you guys experience through this activity. When you look at that picture, it makes you feel a certain way, right? And so the colors, the shapes, the lighting, the nature, all things that play into the psychology of what we look at when we see real estate, right? And it affects the social paradigms around that asset. So the examples of how this built environment influences our mood, right? So as you're walking through some of these places, you're thinking, man, that's nice, that feels good, I would want to hang out here, I'd want to spend my paycheck there. You know, please God save me, I don't want to hear that, that looks terrible. Right, so I mean, there's a piece and an effect that happens psychologically, whether we like it or we're willing to admit it or not. There's a social impact of real estate. Adaptive reuse plays a heavy hand in that. So, that in mind, I hope you know me and I hope you know our team. I hope you agree that adaptive reuse is fantastic. And I hope you would consider yourself dangerously informed about the benefits of adaptive reuse. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Carson. Great job. Any questions for Mr. Carson here? My question would be, why don't you give him some of your most pertinent and well-known examples of adaptive reuse here in Atlanta?
Yeah, so most people ask for the checklist, like the best practices checklist, and those are trade secrets. So I'm kidding, I'd be happy to share that with you too. Yeah, so we've got some cool stuff going right now. Last year we were working down at the Pratt Pullman Yard, which is a fantastic little deal down in Lower East Side, which has historic preservation on it as well as some overbuild and infill. Right now, my team is working on, it's kind of both ends of the spectrum, but we've got a project up in Alpharetta. It's a custom motorcycle shop next door to a coffee shop. And how those two met, I have no idea. But we had existing motorcycle shops. It's called Pop's Garage. It's a really cool business. And they said, hey, we want to get in the coffee business. So they bought the building next door. They've linked the two together. And they're set to open in November, which is really cool. It's like 4,000 square feet, pretty small. And then we're working on about 85,000 square feet downtown, right on Peachtree at America's Mart, Building 1. So America's Mart's going through a pretty significant lobby repositioning. It's been interesting. Their business model is all shaped around taking hundreds of thousands of people and sticking them in a building for a market for a week. So as you can imagine, COVID has been an interesting effect that none of us saw coming. So we're really thankful to be involved on both of those projects. We've got some other stuff teed up. We're looking at a deal down in Columbus for repositioning a farmer's market, which I don't know, 5 years ago, if you just said that's what I'd be looking at this week, I would have told you you're crazy. But either way, yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Adaptive reuse, taking some strange places, but they're all fun.
What would you say is your hottest vertical market right now? Is industrial conversion to flex really big? Or?
Yeah, so as we all know, 2020 has been an interesting year, right? Out of the gate, we were all kind of wide open in terms of all the assets. So I mean, we probably have 13 or 14 different lines of business within PDS, the types of assets that we serve. But yeah, right now, our industrial practice is killing it for the e-commerce business, which you guys can all imagine. People cooped up and doing online shopping. Busy man. But yeah, industrial's doing really well. Our office interiors group is doing well too. A lot of people are taking advantage of the time right now where their buildings are somewhat vacant, right? People are working from home, so they had capital planning and CapEx dollars that needed to be allocated and spent, and so they're taking down that initiative now while they don't have to deal with the headaches of working at night and avoiding loading dock issues and things like that with an active building, which is always super interesting. But yeah, I think those are probably our two. Healthcare is blowing and going, as you guys can imagine that too. We see a little piece of that adaptive reuse. You see a lot of these Emory and Piedmont groups that are going in and they're buying kind of standalone commercial buildings like old banks. And they're converting the banks into urgent care facilities or outpatient facilities, which is really cool to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks again.